She also helped pass numerous bills that benefit the whole nation and our Asian American community. So we're so honored to have her here and to share with us her experience and her career path with us. The next speaker I want to introduce is Miss Fiona Ma. Fiona is California's current treasurer, and the exciting thing is that she is running for the California's Lieutenant Governor in 2026. Let's give her applause. The next speaker, we have our lovely Miss Evelyn Yan. Evelyn is a social activist, and also she has always been advocating for women's rights and kids' rights. We're so honored and so lucky to have her to advocating for us. Thank you so much, and welcome to be here today. So we gathered today to engage in a profound topic which resonates at the heart of the societal progress today, which is empowerment and impact women leaders in the political arena. We're living in a time that embraces the equity, diversity, and inclusion. So it's imperative for us to talk about, to shine a spotlight on the contributions which has made by these women leaders who have harnessed their inner strength and also resilience to come all the way here. Today, we're not only going to dive into the challenges they have faced, but we're here to celebrate the remarkable contribution they have made and will continue to make on the national and the global stage. Thank you so much. Let me first start a question with Judy, maybe? Judy. Thank you for being here today. So, Judy, you have been serving the Congress for the past 14 years, and you have experienced all the ups and downs, and you are a highly respected politician with the incomparable standing in Congress as an Asian American woman. So I want to ask, can you first give us some advice on all the political candidates who are going to kickstart or maybe advance their political career as Asian American women or Asian American men? Thank you.
Well, first, it's so important to have a base. And that's why I always recommend to people that they get involved in local politics. It's so that you have the people who will support you, who will follow you, who will be your campaign volunteers, who will also donate to you. They have to know what you are and what you stand for. They want to see you in action, and they want to know what your values are. So that is incredibly important. I also think it's important in particular for AAPI women to build coalitions, because you know what? We don't, at this point, have any district where you can just win on the Asian vote. That is for darn sure. So what you have to do is to build your support amongst different populations. And that means you knowing their issues and you doing what you can on their issues. Once you gain their confidence that you are sincere about doing that, then, you know, it's a go. Let me also say something about being an AAPI woman in politics. Many of the things that are necessary for being successful in elected office are very un-Asian, you know? They're very un-Asian. For instance, you do have to talk about yourself. You do have to promote yourself. You do have to be aggressive in asking for things, for people to be volunteers or for donations. You do have to go up to strangers and talk and then try to be as lively as possible when you are talking to them. And you have to have a thick skin. You really have to have a thick skin, because if you're going to run in a tough race, it's inevitable that some ugly things will be sent your way. So you have to have a good perspective on what those things are and let it bounce off you, or else take some of the feedback and try to incorporate it so you can be a better person. So those things put pressure on you to be un-Asian, but the other thing about being an API woman in politics, you also have to be Asian. You know, you have to, first of all, for your own integrity, of course, maintain Asian values, work for Asian American equity, and also, of course, meet the Asian community where it's at, go to their events, and also support them on their issues. So it's a complex conundrum of things if you are an AAPI woman in politics.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This is so meaningful for our community. I know it's so hard for women's, as wives, as moms, to stand up and to expose your personal life to the public. And I was thinking about running, but I don't have the courage as you guys. So it's really hard. Thank you so much. And I think my next question will go to Fiona. Fiona, it's so exciting to see you are going to run for the lieutenant governor for 2026. I think in your political career, you have seen a lot of challenges. So this time, when you are going to advance your career to the next level, what kind of challenges you have faced, and how can you overcome that?
Yeah, so I would totally agree with everything that the Congresswoman just said. And for women, especially Asians, women in politics, it's like Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. Ginger Rogers did everything Fred Astaire did, but backwards and in high heels. That is how we live every single day, because we have to be tough, we have to be, graceful, but then yet we have to be the woman in the flowing, beautiful skirts and the makeup, right? And so everything she said is totally true. For Congresswoman Chu and myself, we started at the local level. We served on our local city council. We both served in the state legislature. We both served in the State Board of Equalization. And then she went to Congress and is so fierce. I hope we get to talk about what she's doing to get more API appointees, because I actually saw it in action. And then I decided to stay at the state level because I started late in politics, and getting to know just California, 58 counties, all these cities and positions took a lot from me. And so going to the federal level, it's just mind-boggling. I could not run for Congress, I could not run for Senate, because that is a whole nother foreign experience. And Congresswoman Judy Chu is doing an amazing job leading us and representing us. So thick skin, definitely a thick skin, but you get a thick skin by running for different offices. So we are constantly attacked, and I think we're surprised sometimes at how people attack us, right? Even though we've been through the gauntlet many times, we've been doing this for 20 plus years, and you're right, you have to have a tough skin. And I think that is the challenge as we run for higher office. As you can see, some of my colleagues, right? Ricardo Lara, Tony Thurmond, Rob Bonta, right? John Chung, when he ran for governor, and as I'm gonna run for another position, they are gonna continue to attack us, because that's what the media does. Unfortunately, I am very, very disappointed in the media. There's very few reporters who are balanced and wanna get the true story. They just want to get the fast headline and tweet it out so that they can get more likes and shares. They're doing us a disservice, because whatever you say to the media, they pretty much want to just distort it. And it's so bad that I don't even want to talk to a reporter anymore face to face. I used to talk to reporters all the time. Call me, I'll give you background, but the fact that they don't quote me in a good light anymore, or they put the bad picture. Okay, so here's another thing. If you see me on social media and it is a bad picture, it's probably a good story. If it's a really bad story, they will put the best picture of me, right? So everyone will click on like, oh, what's going on? It's a really bad story. So this is, unfortunately, we used to be able to defend ourselves, right? And be able to, talk about what we've done and what we want to do, and that's not the case anymore. So I think as Asian Americans, it is getting harder and harder to run for office. It doesn't matter whether we've been around for so long. They don't want to focus on all the things that we've done that are good. They want to focus on the one thing that they don't agree with. One vote out of 35 years, they still want to bring it up and say, I'm not going to vote for you because of that one vote. And I'll say, that was 20 years ago. Like, have you been following anything else I do? And they're like, no, we'll never vote for you because of that one vote. And that really hurts many of the young people who are running and trying to prove themselves because, like this panel just talked about, it is very complicated. And you can have differences of opinion, but when it's quoted out of context, then it doesn't give us a lot of confidence that we are going to get a fair shake in politics, because we never do, especially women. We're always going to be, devalued. People always say, well, how did you get to public office? Who appointed you? Like, no one appointed me. I got elected in my own right. Oh, who are your donors? How are you getting supported? How about just going door to door, grassroots, right? They're always assuming that we had some easy way to get to where we are, but we have been fighters. I watched Judy, she's fought a lot of tough races. I fought a lot of tough races, and we just have to continue to support each other. And these convenings are so important because you all get to know us a little bit better, and not through the media or social media. And we also are able to connect with you, to mentor you like some of the young people have asked us to do.
Thank you so much, Fiona. Hi, Evelyn. My next question will be with you. Thank you for being here today. If you noticed, I intentionally not introduce you as Andrew Yan's wife at the beginning, because that's not important.
Well, it is, to be fair, how most people know me and recognize my name. So I don't mind it, but thank you. Thank you for the consideration.
Yeah, thank you. So I think every supporter of Andrew Yan witnessed your great efforts during Andrew's 2020 presidential campaign and the 2021 New York City mayor election. So we all appreciate your sacrifice of your personal life to elevate Andrew to be a phenomenon, a political leader. So, but for today, I'm more curious about your plan. Do you have any plan for yourself, especially in politics?
I'm asked that every once in a while, and I always say one in the family is enough, I think. I really do, in that sense, give a lot of credit to my fellow co-panelists here, because it's a much more comfortable position to be the partner than it is to be the candidate, because I'm not the one that's constantly in the spotlight. And although there are times when there were times in the past when I have been, like especially in New York, we have a lovely paper called the New York Post, and one time they read a headline that was like, Evelyn Yang says her husband Andrew is crazy. I mean, that was literally the headline. So as the spouse, I'm not immune to it, but I agree that the thick skin is a necessity. But not to be discouraging for any young people here who are considering a career in politics, the thick skin develops surprisingly quickly. You think that you will be devastated by a negative article or a negative headline, but really it just fades into the background as long as you believe that what you're doing is for the good. And I think that's what everyone, at least to give everyone the benefit, really no matter what party you're in. What I've seen of among Asian American candidates, at least, is that we're here to really help our communities, right? And I think it's really, really important to exercise our voices in politics, because it's the only way that will be represented in really just every day. Like, you know, we were talking about, people ask me all the time, like, what was it like to be arrested? Because I was arrested last year protesting this mega jail in Chinatown. And that was a perfect example of why we need more leaders in our community, because it would be inconceivable to think that a mega jail, this is the world's tallest jail, going in the center of Chinatown in New York City, right? Anyone who's been to Chinatown would say, this makes no sense on the face of it. But why was it a proposed plan? Because they believed that the community there was powerless to do anything about it. So it is about using our voice and being unafraid to use our voice. So I really do encourage people to get involved in politics at any level. For me personally, again, one in the family is enough, but you know, we talked about the unique obstacles presented to women in politics, and you know, it's difficult. It's not just a matter of courage, but it's a matter of logistics, right? At the state and at the national level, you have to be away. You know, you're in Washington or you're at your state capitol for several days of the week. And with children, it could be an impossibility. So if you find yourself with an opportunity and the logistical bandwidth to pursue it, I would absolutely encourage it. I think it's very important for our community.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. My next question, I prepared some questions for Judy, but I think Fiona just raised a question. It's much better than mine. So I'm going to ask you this question, which is that, could you please share with us your stories or experience about your effort to help to promote more AAPI appointees in the Congress or in any level of the political arena?
Well, I would gladly do that. And in fact, one person that I helped was the great Fiona Ma, because she would have been a great U.S. treasurer, which meant that her signature would have been on every bill that's put out by the United States. Can you imagine that? She would have been the very first Asian person in that position. So anyway, yeah, I did my utmost to do that, but then ultimately she made the personal decision because of her situation, family situation, to stay in San Francisco. But yeah, this is so important. Now, I often talk about the fact that it's so important for us to have a seat at the table. What do I mean? AAPIs having a seat at the table, finally having representation in Congress. We used to be invisible, now we have 21 AAPIs in Congress. But what this does is give us the opportunity to push for AAPI appointees at the highest level of government. And that's actually what I've spent much of my time doing, including our latest big battle to get Julie Su to be our labor secretary under the Biden administration. She would be the first cabinet secretary that is AAPI in the Biden administration. So we fought as hard as we can, and in fact, when the deputy position came open, we pushed for that. Thankfully, the Biden administration has been very enthusiastic about her, and now that the actual labor position is open because the previous person, Marty Walsh, left, she's been made acting secretary. We've done everything within our power to lobby every person you can to get the votes necessary, which is basically 50 votes in the Senate. But just last week we heard that one person, one Senator, Joe Manchin, is not going to do it, so it is putting the kibosh on this thing. Nonetheless, thankfully, in the labor secretary position, you can be acting for as long as the president wishes her to be. But actually, I've pushed and supported so many other people. Well, how about Dominic Ng as a leader of our efforts for APEC? And the APEC summit is the summit of Asian countries. And this summit, for the first time in a long time, is going to be coming to San Francisco in November. We have this very extremist group of anti-China Congress members who sent a letter to the FBI saying that Dominic Ng is a spy for China and that he should be taken off of that. So I spoke out. I used my platform to speak out against that. And as a result, one of those 5, this very extreme Texas Congress member, accused me of being a spy for China. Yeah. So, but you know what? I do not regret this at all. I am so proud to have spoken out for Dominic Ng. Yes, absolutely. Dominic has been such a leader in the banking industry at a time when AAPS could not get loans. He built up the East West Bank from scratch, and now it's such a prominent bank in this nation. He deserves everything that he should get. I mean, and this is a very wonderful position for him because he is a bridge between Asia and the US. So I felt good about being there to speak up for him at a critical moment, which then gave kind of permission for all others to speak up. And so, yes, I do not regret that for 1 minute. We have to be there to do that, to push the qualified candidates that are out there.
That's wonderful. Can I just...
So I want to add to the story. So when the Biden administration came into office, they did not have any high-level AAPIs as part of their cabinet. And Judy Chu, as the chair of the API caucus, and the 2 senators, right? Tammy Duckworth and, who's the other one? Mazie Hirono, okay? These ladies are like amazing, right? So Mazie and Tammy said, well, we're not gonna confirm any of the Biden administration nominees unless you start putting APIs up for cabinet level positions. And they started doing that. But for these ladies in both houses standing firm and, you know, putting their power where their mouth is, basically in their position, we were able to get more equity. So I'm just saying it's important to be at every table, right? Every table we can, whether it's school board, city council, the assembly, the Senate, US Senate. I mean, that's gonna be an important seat as well. Congress, right? I mean, every seat is important. And now we have Kamala Harris as the vice president in the White House, right? We're getting there, we're getting closer, but we need more young people to run for office. And I wanna talk a little bit about parents later on if we have time, but like my parents never said, be happy. We grew up in a different generation. Our parents said, we would like you to be a lawyer, engineer, accountant, or a doctor. Do what makes us happy, right? In our house, you live under our roof, you listen to us, you do what we say. So we kind of grew up, I think, under another generation. But the young people are so outspoken. They have opinions. My parents never asked us, like, what is your opinion? Let's talk about, you know, issues of the day, right? Some of the parents say, oh, our kids don't talk to us about it. But we didn't grow up like that. We listened to what our parents said. And whatever biases our parents have, we have the same bias inbuilt in us, right? So I would say, you know, as adults, we have to be very careful what we say to the next generation. Because if we say, oh, those people are racist, then our kids start thinking, oh my God, there's people that are racist against us, right? Otherwise, the kids don't really talk about, you know, those type of issues. So I heard that in one of the comments early on, but I just really appreciate the young people for coming out today and being so articulate and outspoken, but open to sharing your opinions. I really like that conversation about affirmative action where, yes, of course, everybody wants a chance, right? But then the young woman said, well, some people don't have the same opportunities as us. And then affirmative action also goes to employment opportunities. How many of us are top leaders in Hollywood, at attorney firms, at accounting, in banking, right? Well, unless, we see some sort of equality or people at the top who are making sure that there is diversity, equity, and inclusion, there isn't going to be any. And so we have passed laws in the state of California mandating a certain number of women on corporate boards, a certain amount of minorities on corporate boards, and they got struck down by the Supreme Court. But after you get out of college, you're gonna see another whole set of barriers, right, outside in terms of employment and opportunities.
Thank you so much. It's amazing because I learned a lot from your conversation, not only because as the women leaders, but as a parent. I never realized this event, we're not only talking about politics, but also the training for parents. I learned a lot. Thank you so much. So I think my next question would be a question for all of you. I think as women leaders, when you are trying to voice out and trying to make a decision, sometimes you get challenged just because of your gender. Have you ever encountered this kind of situation, and how did you handle it?
Have I been challenged because of my gender? I think I've been challenged, certainly when I worked in the corporate, but this, I call it my past life before I had children. And I think that there's a stereotype of Asian women in particular of being meeker and being afraid to defend your position. And I've never been afraid of conflict, actually. And I think that was surprising to people in a corporate environment. I think that was also surprising to the public when we were on the campaign trails and I was outspoken about a variety of issues that I care about. One being autism advocacy and special needs. And I know that there are families who have special needs in politics for whatever reason. It's not something that was previously spoken widely about. And when we showed up on the trail, it was very obvious to us that we would just talk about our personal experiences. We are running for office, and this is our experience that we know impacts millions of other families across the country. And that, and my instinct was, well, there should be no fear in talking about this, right? Any hesitation actually contributes to the stigma. And I think it's just, using the platform that you have in that moment, right? And you could call it, I even hesitate to call it bravery, but it's really just following your instinct, right? If you have something to say, then you should say it, right? If you have a desire to run for office, for example, what are the reasons behind it? You have to be clear in your mind what you're using your platform for. What are you using your voice for? And then you can be okay with the consequences, whether people shoot you down, whether people want to, drag you through the mud in the media or whatever it is, as long as I think it's for the good. And you feel like you want to defend it, then you should. I don't know, does that make sense? Like you have to just live your convictions, right? And not be afraid of what other people are going to say. And that's in any context, whether it's at work, whether it's in a relationship or in politics. Thank you.
Okay, well, I am conflict adverse. Like I said, you can tell the family that I grew up in, my dad was always right. He always talked. He was the boss. And if we were upset, we just never questioned him. And the way we would deal with conflict is through family members. So if people were mad at each other in my family, we'd go through my mother, who maybe went through me, who went through, you know what I mean? And my mother would have to try to calm things down. So in politics, it's probably better to face conflict head on, but it's not something that I was brought up and not something that I'm comfortable with. So I'm more like, hopefully it blows over. If you don't see it, just, what goes around comes around. I believe in karma, right? If people are going to be negative and evil and spiteful, I figure, someone will take care of them later on. But I do think being able to deal with conflict with people earlier than later would be helpful, because if you let relationships continue the way they are and you don't stand up for yourself or say something, then they continue down that path. And so I have found that men, there's type A type of men that may, think that I'm stupid, or they don't understand how I got here. They think I'm weak or meager, whatever. I don't stand up for myself, and I just pretend I didn't hear it, right? But eventually it does come around. And if you, like Evelyn said, if you're doing it for the right reasons, people will see that and they will follow you. And then they will see that, the people that are attacking you every day are not doing it because of a good reason, but really because of perhaps their own ego or insecurity. So I have found a lot of men that I deal with on a daily basis, even in the banking world, right? You can tell that they don't respect me, right? But so I just sit and I go, okay, thank you very much. And they don't ask for my opinion and whatever, but I keep continuing to get elected, right? For a reason, because we're doing it for the right reasons, and we care about people and we care about our community. So I don't know how you deal with these men.
Well, when I first came to Congress, there were only 24 women in Congress. Now there's 129, so the story is very different. But when I had initiatives, of course, it inevitably resulted in me being in a room full of white men. For example, one of the first things I did when I got to Congress was to work on an apology for the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. So I want you to imagine trying to explain the Chinese Exclusion Act to a bunch of white males. I mean, when we talk about it to each other, second nature, yeah, we know it was really discriminatory and made Chinese Americans second-class citizens and so forth. But with white males, it's constantly skepticism and questioning what you're going to do with such an apology. There's no recognition at all that such a thing was wrong. So you just have to be single-minded in pushing through and thinking of every argument that you can that would justify having an apology. Well, I did, and ultimately we did get that apology unanimously, in fact, in 2012. Today, I think one of my toughest issues, where I'm constantly in a room full of white men, is fighting the anti-China rhetoric. And it comes up now almost constantly in every congressional committee, in every hearing, constantly. But the voices of our community need to be heard. And especially at the beginning, the only voices that were heard were those of white males saying that there's a huge national security risk, and if we love America, then we have to fight against this terrible national security risk, even if it's at the risk of the civil rights of Chinese American. Well, at the beginning, their target was the researchers. Now it's gone even much broader. So yeah, I have been in rooms full of FBI and intelligence people, and they're all white males, and I have to sit there and argue for the civil rights of Chinese Americans, and that they don't paint a broad brush in trying to investigate every Chinese that's out there. And so, yeah, you have to really be focused when you're with those folks, and make sure that you are convinced about the message that you are trying to bring to them. Thankfully, I am. I feel that I am on a mission to make sure that the civil rights of Chinese Americans and all Americans actually are upheld. So that's what gets me through that.
Thank you so much. It's so moving. I like your sharing. Because me, I don't have any experience in politics, but I have some experience in my working environment, especially in the law firm, right? It's dominated by white male. I have seen tens of occasions people challenge me just because of my race and my gender. I think at the beginning, I was also with the Asian culture, and I would be trying to be humble, to be nice, but later on I found out it doesn't work. And also the fear comes that we are going to offend people if we speak up, right? So usually that was in my mind. But later on I found out if I just stand up for myself, don't back out, and then people will respect you, right? So now I have a reputation, at least in my law firm, that nobody can challenge me just because of my gender. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Now I think the next question I want to have is going to be Evelyn, and we have some fun questions. So do you have any suggestions for any women or men whose significant other is a politician?
Some suggestions. Find out early if they're playing. We have a joke that it was a bait and switch when we first met. Andrew and I was like, oh, he's just your, he went to law school, he was an entrepreneur, there were no plans, there were no political plans spoken about during our courtship. No, I'm kidding. I'm very proud that, we took this leap together. And I think it's such a deeply personal thing to be the spouse of a politician, men or women. And I wouldn't actually presume to give anyone any advice about that. But my approach has been to really appreciate these like extraordinary moments. There have been so many extraordinary moments on our journey, and which the journey's not over. I don't know where it will lead, but politics is so singular, right? It's such a unique experience, and even though at times it's challenging, I feel like it's a great privilege to be in such an environment, because it's our democracy at work, right? And it's amazing to be, the children of immigrants, on this, national stage or any stage at any level, representing our supporters. It's actually a beautiful thing, and even if it's hard at times, I think I've really just appreciated how extraordinary it is to be in this position, and how lucky we've been to be able to impact change that we've wanted to see. And I believe that strongly, whether there are candidates who sometimes you win your race, sometimes you lose your race, but whenever you're out there and you're speaking for people who believe in you, it's for good. So that's my take on it.
So I would say when I first got married to my first husband, right, the deal was he was working for a consulting firm and didn't want to work a 9-to-5 job in an office every day. And I said, great. then I said, well, I want to run for office someday. So I was working for Senator John Burton part-time. I had my own CPA practice, and he said, great. So when it came time for me to run in 2002, well, like Yvonne knows, we are never home, okay? We are out every day, right? Just hustling, and he would be like, are you coming home for dinner? I'm like, no, I'll come home for dinner after the election, right? But to his credit, he's kind of an introvert. He would walk like 2 precincts from me, because, you know, a lot of you have gone door to door. He doesn't want to knock on the door, but he will drop flyers. So he did that consistently. Then after I got elected, this was in December, well, you gotta go to holiday parties, you gotta go to, you know, I mean, it just never ends, right? And he's like, are we going to go skiing this weekend? I'm like, no, I gotta go do a cleanup at the beach. Are you gonna come over for dinner? Well, I have to go to a couple of events, so can we eat at like 9 or 10? So by New Year's, he was like, this isn't working for me. And I said, okay, that's fine. This isn't working. This is what I want. Like, I supported you, and now, you know, you're supposed to support me. If it's not what you want, that's fine. And so we got an amicable divorce, but I was single for 10 years. And I always tell women who want to run for office, you got to pick wisely, right? You have to pick or stay single, because this life is, I kind of equate it like being a priest or a pastor. The people are always first. You are always have to be available, and your job is to help people and think about other people all the time. And if you are with someone who needs attention all the time and wants you to be home to cook dinner, you know, take care of the kids and take care of them, it's not gonna last very long. And so the guys that we are with have to be supportive, and they do take second fiddle to us. A lot of times we go to events and it'll say Miss Fiona Ma and Mr. Fiona Ma. And he thinks it's fine now, he doesn't care. But it took a while, because he's also an elected official. He's a firefighter, but elected to his port commission. He ran for Senate, didn't win. And so it is not easy, like Evelyn says. You can only really have one in the family, because if you're gonna have 2, you're never gonna see each other. You're just not. And so you have to make time for each other, and they will take a backseat to you, because, you know, if we're good at it and we keep getting elected, there's a reason we keep getting elected, is because we are out there and available. And like I said, the public expects women to show up. They don't expect the men to show up all the time, but they expect the women to come to every one of their events, every year, every birthday, every ribbon cutting. But if it's okay, the men don't come. But if we don't show up, it's a problem. So this is just the life we lead, but it is an honorable profession. I love what I do every day. I don't want to do anything else. But again, you have to structure your life so that you are able to do this job with the least amount of stress.
Well, thank you so much. This is more exciting than I thought. More interesting, I would say. Are we running out of time? Oh, sorry. Can we open up for maybe a few questions, like 3 questions? Is that okay? Are you okay? Okay. So, all right. Oh, the young man.
Congressman Chu, Treasurer Ma, you guys are talking about anti-Asian hate and specifically anti-Chinese discrimination. And I know you've been very profound, you've been very prolific at fighting that at the congressional level, especially against those Republican congressmen. But do you think it's hard to do it when you have other AAPI congresspeople, such as Representative Michelle Steele or Young Kim, spreading this anti-Chinese rhetoric and othering their fellow Asian Americans? How has that made it more challenging for you?
Very good question. Yeah, I have been engaged in fighting anti-Asian hate ever since the start as the chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, we did press conferences, statements, hearings, and finally got the COVID-19 hate crime bill passed and signed into law. So I know what we are facing, 11,500 anti-Asian hate crimes and incidents. And we need to stand together as a community against this. So to see Michelle Steele actually provoking more anti-Asian hate was just really disgusting and the wrong thing to do. And just so that you know, she was in this election with Jay Chen as her opponent, and she made false videos. Like, for instance, Jay had been interviewed about what he thought Republicans would do to him, and he said, well, I think Republicans are going to say that I want to bring Chinese propaganda from China into the classroom. Well, they cut to only that part that said, I want to bring Chinese propaganda into the classroom, and then put that out as an actual commercial over and over again. That's a kind of dirty thing that was going on. And also, they put up flags that simulated China and put Jay Chen's name on it. And guess what? Jay Chen is a reserve intelligence officer with the US Navy and has the highest security clearance. So I thought it was just absolutely terrible because it actually reinforced this anti-China rhetoric and presented a stereotype that was totally the opposite of who Jay Chen was, but also possibly created more hatred of AAPIs due to these anti-China sentiments.
They said he was like an acolyte of Mao Zedong.
Yeah.
So gross.
Yeah. So I'm a glass half full type of person. So I see this incident as activating our API community, right? I grew up in New York, lived with my grandparents in Chinatown, grew up on Long Island. All of my colleagues were Jewish. So I grew up in a whole different environment than many of us here in California. But I found that when I ran for office my first time, how many Asians did not register, they did not vote, they did not care to vote, and I could not get elected to my first position just on the API community, even though I was running in San Francisco for the Asian seat in District 4, which is half Chinese. I still could not depend on them to get elected. And now, because of all this Asian hate, so many more people are now like awakened, right? That in San Francisco, we were able to recall our DA because the DA was not willing to prosecute any of the hate crimes that was happening toward the Asians. We were able to recall 3 of the school board members because they were not sympathetic to our community. And the Asians now have finally, after 20 years that I've been doing this in San Francisco, they finally have found their voice and their power, and they're not gonna put up with it. And they want to dictate what is happening in their community when it comes to public safety, housing, education, right? And so that's what it's taking to awaken all of us. So thank you for your youth and being so actively engaged, but that's what we need our older generation, your parents, your uncles, your grandparents to say, we don't want this to happen to us or our next generation. We need to register, we need to vote, and we need to elect people who are going to support us and stand up for us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.